Hi, angel babies. It's BB. I'm back. It's been a minute. I don't even want to explain why I haven't been here because I feel like it's not anything exciting or huge. It's just a million little things. But here I am. So I've been wanting to do some VRs that have made me really excited recently. Just like itching to do them. So the one that I'm most excited about is this one, and I'm hoping that this isn't gonna be like the longest video ever. I realized I had more decks that I would consider in this category, even though maybe not in the most traditional sense. I guess you already know what it is, so I don't need to do like this big reveal. So I was inspired by Wesley at 22 Zines to do the Goth AF tag. I guess, I don't know if they made it a tag or not, but it's a tag now because I'm doing a VR. So they showed their goth and punk decks. I'm realizing I have more decks that I would categorize as goth than punk, and that's like an issue. So if you have any good punk decks, like please let me know, because I think I need more in my life, because I love punk rock and I love the philosophy and the style and the aesthetics. So yeah, please comment your punky decks below. So what I did was I made different categories, and then I'll try to explain. I'll show you a little bit of the deck, and I'll try to explain why I think it's a goth and or punk deck, you know, because it can kind of embody both. And the first category is historical goth. So the first deck is the Oracle Medieval Marveo? I don't know. And my upstairs neighbor is hammering crap. And I thought they were done. I may be back after they're finished. Pause. Okay, I'm back. It's been a while for me, a second for you. I think that they're like doing construction upstairs or something. I don't know, but it was loud and obnoxious and took forever. I took a shower, I came back. Anyway, we were here. I already said this and butchered it, so I'm not gonna say it again. I got it on, I think, Amazon France, and I saw it on TarotTube. It has a little booklet. Okay, I don't wanna spend a ton of time with these, so I'm just going to show you some cards because I just have too much. I have too much to do. There's too much to go through. I think that the style and the color palette is very goth, and I also think that the era, right, is goth. So like I said before, this is my historical goth category, and I feel like that shines through. I almost bought a bed like this. Or I wanted to buy a bed like, I found a bed like this, a 4-poster like turned wood, spindled, yeah, turned spindle bed, and it's sold out all over the internet, and I'm so sad. Do I already have a bed frame? Yes. Do I need another one? No, but I'm really obsessed with medieval stuff right now, and you know this, you guys. Okay, so this is my first goth deck, and it's my medieval goth. It is in French. It doesn't have any English in the guidebook, but you know, I just need to get like the hang of Google Translate and it'll be fine. Okay, my second historical goth deck is the Hieronymus Bosch Tarot. I just got this one recently, and it was on my list a long time ago, and then for some reason I forgot about it or I took it off, and I'm just so excited about it. I would call it goth because of themes like this. This artist is definitely known for his dark, like macabre themes, also with like mundane everyday themes, like very weird. This is also not your typical, if you're familiar with this deck, like it's not your typical tarot setup. It's completely restructured and pretty much consists of majors and courts, kind of. No, not courts. I'm sorry. Majors, it does have courts, obviously, but it has a bunch of different suits, and yeah, it's weird. But I love it. And it's very goth. Goth baby. Super goth. So that's the Hieronymus Bosch. This one is also a mass market, and you can find it on Amazon US. It is by Rockpool. Okay, my second category is what I call literary goth. And the first one that came to mind literally has literary in the title. It's the Literary Witches Oracle. And again, goth color palette, muted grays, but also has like an eerie, macabre feeling in the imagery itself. It's like, it's kind of spoopy in a Victorian type of way. And there are contemporary writers in here and writers from different times in history, so it's not just a Victorian thing. But I think that the imagery skews a little bit vintage and dark. And I mean, that makes sense, right? Because literature can be really dark, more so in the things that we consume than a lot of other forms of art and media. Very cool, very goth. I can't think of Emily Dickinson without thinking goth. And I know she didn't think she was goth, but she's goth. I'm sorry. You don't have to be Edgar Allan Poe to be goth. So that's the Literary Witches Oracle. The next deck in my literary goth category is the Dark Wood Tarot. And this isn't based on a book, nor is it really based on any particular story as far as like the whole deck together. Like if you look at this, it does look like Red Riding Hood, but that's more coincidental, or like it would be a loose, you know, a loose theme for maybe just that image, not necessarily the whole deck. And the reason I put this in literary goth is because I feel like it reminds me of gothic, like horror novels. Gothic fantasy. Just kind of has that dark edge. It's not just fantasy. It's spoopy fantasy. I wish this deck was a little bit bigger. I think I've probably said that before. I don't mind the borders, but I don't know. I want the imagery to be a little larger. It seems like this is a standard size tarot deck. So good. Just not your everyday tarot imagery. Kind of messed up. Kind of a little bit more gory, a little bit more... Oh, we've got some upside downies. A little bit more spoopy. So I would say that's goth, and I would say it reminds me of like literature a little bit, you know? And if so far you're not with me and you're like, oh my gosh, where are the goth decks? I think I have, I think I have some. I am attracted to gothic aesthetics and art, but maybe not in the same way that a lot of people on TarotTube are. And I I don't think I have a dedicated vampires deck, and it's not that I don't want one. It's just that I haven't found the right one for me. And it doesn't mean, again, that like I don't appreciate the art of, what is it, like the Bohemian Gothic Tarot, or the Tarot of Vampires, or, you know, like I understand why they're so loved, but I just haven't been able to pull the trigger on any of them. So hopefully you won't be too mad. Hopefully you'll be understanding of what I do have and am showing. It doesn't mean I'm excluding all of the ones that are very obviously gothic and classic gothic decks. They're just not decks that I own. Okay, so the next category I created or curated is cyberpunk or cybergoth. And the first deck is the Moon Power Tarot. And I think that this deck sometimes feels punky and it sometimes feels gothy, and it just depends on the card. It's obviously kind of cosmic, but it has a rebellious nature. I like to call this like an Aquarius deck. It has this like air of counterculture to it, of DIY. And I just imagine the people in this deck are listeners of goth music or punk music. Like, that's very Riot Girl to me. And it's by Six Sad Girls. This is an indie deck. And there are lots of different decks by this creator. Like, I think there's like the Sun, maybe there's not the Sun. There's the Mars Power Tarot. There's another one too. I can't remember. But those are very cool too. This is I think the oldest one and the one that kind of jumped out at me the most. But I do like how the Mars Power Tarot has like an image that's inspired by FKA Twigs. Really love that. The next deck I have is the Love and Mystery Tarot. I've shown this one before. This is a Japanese deck. And I cannot read the guidebook, obviously. This is a mass market deck that doesn't have like easy distribution in the US. So like I don't think you can get it on Amazon US. I don't remember how I got it, but I think I got it from an Asian website. It's a pip deck. But this is very cyberpunk to me. This is very... I think also there was this time in like the 80s where there was a subculture that was really into like Asian culture and technology, you know, and maybe that was fueled by like manga and anime. But it doesn't feel like, this doesn't feel classical. It feels futuristic. I bought this deck for this card. I love it. And I don't know, like I know it's kind of colorful for a punk rock deck or a goth deck, but it just like has the vibes. Like tell me if you see it. I cannot get these to be right side up. It's like very cyberpunk. P.S. What's your favorite, like, cyberpunk anime? Because I'm really into that and I want to know. Okay, so yeah, this is, it did have a different name. I think it might have been like the Princess, I don't remember. Princess something. I will write it on the screen, but it's also known as the Love and Mystery Tarot. And then the last deck in this category is the Tarot of the Silicon Dawn. And this one is very cyberpunk and kind of gothy. This one has a bunch of extra cards like these, and then they're kind of embossed with, there you go, like a black on black. And a lot of cards have that as well. So they're kind of extra images within the card. I don't know if I can, you see. This is another one that I've said before I wish was bigger, because it's itty bitty, it's real tiny. The cardstock is like kind of cheapy. It's such a cool deck though, and the guidebook is amazing. Yeah, very cyberpunk. This would be like a cool TV show. I wish someone would make this. Lots of different creatures and beings. You know, it kind of reminds me like a little bit of Saga, which is my favorite. I don't know if it's considered a comic book. It's just my favorite comic. Yeah, it is considered a comic. And it's kind of like a space opera. And there are different types of like beings and stuff. Okay, sorry. I got like too entranced with this deck. I haven't used it for a minute, but this was one of the first decks that I got like to expand my collection. It might have been my second or third deck ever, and I used to read with it and just rely heavily on the guidebook because there are a lot of like different interpretations and like extra things and stuff, and it's just so cool. This one I think is out of print now, but like look at this book. Like, so good. Okay, so that is my cyberpunk / cyber goth section. My next section is pastel goth, and I only have one deck in this category, and it is the Lovely Omens Tarot. This is an indie deck. I bought this secondhand. I think, is it still in, oh yeah, it's still in order. Okay, so I'm not gonna make it out of order. I'm just going to show you from here. But it's very modern, like very contemporary. But I mean, I have another category this could have gone under, which is kind of like witchy, because it's very like modern witch. But pastel goth is a thing, and it was popularized like in the Tumblr era, and I just felt like it was worth like putting in its own little space, you know? It's like, yeah, I think the fact that it's pastel trumps the fact that it's witchy, like, because it separates it a lot from a regular, like, goth or punk, you know? But I love it. It's really, really cute. It's fun to use on other people as far as, like, the reactions that you get and, like, the pips and things. People really respond to this. Okay, so my next category is witchy goth, so I'll be able to tell you about that. So you got to start witchy goth off with the OG Barbara Walker Tarot. We're all very familiar with this one. She's beautiful, she does her thing, but she is on the fringe. She is a little bit occult. She is dark. She's not afraid of being a little bit gothic, and we love her for it. Like, it does have a fair amount of black, which, you know, you would think is a necessity for goth, but it also is balanced really well with all these really saturated colors, most of them being primary. We have some like secondary in here, not a lot of tertiary, which are like the purples and, no wait, purple's a secondary, right? Yes. Not a lot of purple in here, which is maybe why I like it so much. There is some pink. Pink is a tertiary, right? Okay, don't listen to me. I haven't taken an art or a color theory course in a really long time. So, but this is a great one, and it's very much a throwback. The next witchy deck I have is the Stunning Tarot, and this is the first edition. The reason I did the first edition, not the second, is because I think that the first edition looks more punk and goth than the second edition. The second has different backs. Like, these are some goth backs. These are some punk backs, you know? And then the second edition also has like softer colors. And these are much more like in line with the Barbara Walker, saturated. These are intense, high contrast. And even when using pinks and reds or purples, it's very gothy and, as on theme, very witchy. It does have like the Egyptian element, but like I think the color scheme keeps it, you know, within the parameters of goth. Or punk, who knows? Would you think this is more of a punk deck or a goth deck? I guess maybe it depends on the suit that you're in. So that's the Stunning Tarot. I have the first and second edition. I would love the third because they're all different and I like them all. So if you have the third edition and you don't want it, let me know. Next up is the Sacred Symbols Oracle deck by Marcella Krall. This is an indie deck. It may have gone mass market now, but my version is indie. It even had like a correction in the book. It was older. The Eye of Horus always reminds me of goth because I feel like goths were into like Egyptian religion before other people were. And it's really just the simplicity for me. Again, it's very punk rock that these are all hand drawn and it doesn't feel perfect. It also somehow makes it seem more witchy that way because being witchy is a DIY existence anyway, right? You're doing stuff, you're crafting. I mean, call it spell work, call it what you want, call it ritual. It's DIY. It's craft, right? Witchcraft. Small deck. Just has a witchy punk goth vibe. Just like very 90s goth, very 80s and 90s goth with this Eye of Horus. Next up is The Witch's Tarot, and not only is it witchy, it says it right in the name, it's also very goth and a photography deck. You've got like long dark hair in every photo almost. You've got like morose, moody, ghostly type images. Nudity warning, you're on my channel. There's going to be nudity, not for children. Yeah, this one speaks for itself. I mean, it's very contemporary, but it's definitely goth, and all of these people, like, they can represent different styles, but they're all pretty gothy, especially in the way that they're being presented, right? Really cool art deck. It is not easy to get together though, because it's rose petal, and I mean, yeah, it's just the rose petal. The cardstock's good, it's bendy, but it's just the rose petal finish that makes them all stick together and not want to get in line. Next was my first tarot deck, which is the Wild Unknown Tarot, and I would call this Goth because of the dark themes, the limited color palette, or maybe it's not a limited color palette, but there's limited color in the cards. The pen and ink drawing style, like it goes there, you know? Oh, see, they're all together. It does have color for, you know, effect. But even then, it does feel like composed, controlled. And this deck really shines in its black and white moments. And just the feeling, it feels like if a goth and a new age person had a baby, it would be this. Does that mean that, like, if a goth and a new age person had a baby, it would be Kim Kranz? Maybe. Maybe they did. Maybe that's what Kim Kranz's parents are like. The next witchy goth / witchy punk deck I have is the Slutist Tarot. This is an indie deck. There are, I think, a couple different editions. And I like this because I feel like it represents, like, a lot of diversity and realism when it comes to, like, the goth and punk communities. So I don't think that necessarily this deck on its own and the characters that it's showing are all goth and or punk, but I think that the way that they're presented in, like, radical acceptance with themselves and their community is very punk, and it's very goth, because I think that they're at their best, these communities are really positive and supportive and welcoming. Oh, here, oh, cute. Actual goth. Oh, they started doing stuff upstairs. Okay, I'll just finish this and then I'll pause. I'm really sorry. Yeah, so we've got witchy, we've got punk, we've got goth, and you don't have to look any certain way. Definite big content warning, okay? This is for adults, but a great deck. Great, great, great deck. It doesn't have a guidebook. It has like I think it has a PDF guidebook, which I hate, because it's not that I don't appreciate it. I don't hate that it exists. I hate that, like, I don't have a printer. So whenever I buy a deck that has a PDF guidebook, I'm kind of like SOL, you know? Okay, I'm gonna go and I'll be back when this noise is over. Okay, so I have 2 more decks for this category, and they go together because they're both by the same creator. They're both oracles. I guess this one is also a tarot, or I know this one is also a tarot, but I don't use it as a tarot. It's Thoth-based, which is amazing, and I'm really happy to have something that's like Thoth or very Thoth-based and, like, isn't the Thoth. And then this was the first oracle that she did. This is by Octaspaman. This is the Elvine. This is like a store and it was a collab with this store, and it was like a limited edition. But I would say the Elven, which says ask us anything. Oh, Magic Super Oracle cards. I never thought about that maybe being the title of this. This, like, it's been called all of these different things. So who knows what the actual title is, but this one is the Outgrow Yourself. And these are both, so these are both very punk. And then the black one, I feel like, is a little bit more goth to me. I don't know, maybe the white one is too. But really great imagery, really counterculture-y, really like radical self-acceptance. I've just given up on like the construction upstairs because like it's happening and like they're assholes, and I mean maybe the construction is needed, and like and I'm calling it construction. I don't know what they're doing. I have no idea. But I'm over it. I'm over like trying to like schedule my stuff around theirs. Like I think it's just really freaking rude. And if it were, I'm gonna go on an unrelated tangent, guys. If it were like something that, you know, the building had to do for upkeep or to fix something, then we should have gotten a notice about it. So we didn't, and I'm mad. So those are my witchy goth / witchy punk decks. My next category is 80s goth. So that would include the Gothmancy, which may be 80s and 90s, but very much makes me think of 80s goth. We've got lots of well-known goth and or just, you know, like trend-setting grandfathers of goth, like moody people in this deck. We've got Poe. The other one was Johnny Cash, obviously. People like Robert Smith of The Cure, Susie Sue. Oh, I didn't realize he was in this. Isn't that Kat Von D's husband, or is that supposed to be him? Let me know if you know. I forget his name. Raphael? Or does he go by Leifer? I know that's what they named their son. Is this Nick Cave? It says in the guidebook. That looks like Lux Interior from the Cramps. Stevie. Divine. Gary Newman. A very cool, very pop culture-y The Crow. What was his name? You guys are gonna kill me. Elvira, the Addams Family. Ben Lee? He's Bruce Lee's son, right? I was very young when The Crow came out, and my parents were not into that kind of stuff, so they definitely didn't make sure that I saw it. I learned about The Crow later. After I started dating my first boyfriend, he knew a lot about it because his parents were into like goth and punk. But I don't know, it's been a long time and I haven't retained it, so I apologize. But I love this deck because I do like a lot of that music. And I like learning about things I don't already know about, too. Ben. Is his name Ben? Whatever. You'll tell me. Okay, so this one, I have a couple decks that Wesley has in their collection, too. So, this is one of them, and this is the New Wave Tarot. This is an indie deck. It is out of print. They did say in their video that you could probably still get this, and I think that's true because I got it, and I didn't get it for like a crazy amount either. So this has a lot of new wave as well as like goth or like punk adjacent like musicians. And the vibe is, oh, see, like, I was about to say Exene Cervenka. That's polystyrene. That is not Exene Cervenka. Again, CZ Sue. We've got PJ Harvey. Tears for Fears. And Adamant. Kate Bush. Oh, I forget her name too, but she was in the Go-Go's. And the Go-Go's were punk before they, you know, signed a contract and they had to go a certain way. Is that Lady Miss Kier? I don't know. Devo. A great deck. And I mean, it has a lot of pop culture, but just the feeling of it is very punk and Debbie Harry. And then the feeling of it is also like very goth. And I adore it. And it's definitely of its time. This is like, new wave was very 80s. That's Nick Cave. And it's precious. I love it. The last deck I have for 80s goth is kind of a mix between, it's like 60s, 70s, 80s, and it has a lot of gothy elements in it. So I'm putting it in here, and I'm also like, it doesn't feel as modern. It feels like a throwback of a certain time. So that's why I'm putting it in this category. It definitely has like its bohemian moments. It's like hippie-ish moments, but at its heart, I get like very goth vibes. There's a darkness to it. There's an edginess to it. And it's also very specific to these decades. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't look super modern per se. The hair, the makeup, the clothing. Do people still wear these things or look like this? Yes, definitely. But it's not considered new. It's more of an homage or inspired by. Very cool. Very punk. Oh, did I say the name of this deck? It's the Caitlin Madison Tarot. It's just called The Tarot, but it's by Caitlin Madison, so I just refer to it as the Caitlin Madison, and so is everyone else I know who owns this deck. Okay, those are my 80s decks as far as goth and punk, and my next category is art goth, and that's a little bit broad, but I think you'll get the idea. I have 3 decks in this category. The first being, of course, the Mary L. This is like high art goth. Very primal. Because there is kind of that element to the goth aesthetic. You know, goth is about like, or a part of it is about peering into the shadows of the world and your own soul and society and not being afraid of those depths. And this deck very much embraces that. So we've all seen it. We all know it, the Marielle. The next deck I chose for art goth is the Lubanko. This was a Kickstarter. Has a lot of black, which helps. Is also very primal. The nature of the images and the technique of the art style is like very scratchy and organic. Again, a deck that has to do with darkness and depths and human nature. I can definitely see this in a goth person's library for sure. The way that color is used is so deliberate and like sets a mood. I don't think it takes away from its gothness. So that's the Lubanko. The last deck I have in this category is the True Black tarot. So I almost didn't include this one, but then I did think of, okay, if we're thinking high art goth, this would apply. Because I don't think that it's goth in itself, but it's like high fantasy themes, and the fact that it's just in this inky abyss and its moodiness. It's goth. It's just, I used to have this book called What is Goth, and I think I got it, it was just like a humor book, and it like outlined the different types of goth, like romantic goth, vampire, trad goth, like cyberpunk, industrial, things like offsets, right? Subcultures of goth. And it was really funny, and it was meant to be silly. I think it was by Voltaire, not the Voltaire, but like the guy who calls himself Voltaire. He has a YouTube channel. I think it was by him, and it was years and years and years ago. But it was also like, it was silly, but it was also really helpful because I did learn a lot about goth culture that way. Yeah. But yeah, so I think that like this falls under the very big umbrella that is goth, and it is a gorgeous deck. Like the image quality of these, I mean, they're all paintings, but they're incredible. And they're so realistic when it comes to like the cups, the water, like this sense of air and space. That's the True Black. I think the True Black came out with a new edition. I don't remember what the difference was, but I don't have it. This is the first edition. Okay, we've come to the last category, which I called Miscellaneous because I'm so creative. And the first deck I have is the Zodiac Oracle by Amber Carr. This was, I think, a Kickstarter as well, or maybe it was just an indie deck on a limited print run. Most of the cards are like this, where it's just a single image, and it doesn't have a piece of art connected to it. But anytime there is a piece of art on here, it's a little bit goth, which we love. Let me get rid of these guys. It's really beautiful. She's on Instagram, Amber Carr Art. It's C-A-R-R. And she does sell her art and prints and things like that if you're interested. I don't think this deck is still available. But, you know, so good. So that's the Zodiac Oracle. The next deck I have is also one that Wesley showed, and it's the Gorgon's Tarot. This one's pretty straightforward. It's black and white. Everybody looks like they're wearing goth makeup because it's black and white, and the way that the eyes and like the eye makeup is drawn, or not makeup, but like the way that the eyes are drawn. And it's sick. It's really cool. It's a great deck. This is the smaller one. I used to have the larger one, but I never used it. So I didn't do a trade. I think I sold the larger one and then I bought the smaller one, but I kept the book because the smaller one doesn't come with a book, unfortunately. But a lot of the patterns too remind me of different types of like goth clothing or art. This is a vibe. This is definitely a vibe. Oh yeah, 100%. You could go to a club and see, like a goth club, and see someone dressed exactly like this. Very cool, very cool. The next deck I have is the Gentle Thrills Tarot. I've shown this one on my channel before, and it's very punk rock to me. Just kind of the like exertion of energy and the interesting color scheme. It does seem like bright and happy, but these people, they're just counterculture people. You just recognize one when you see them, especially if it's like for like, you know, like if you are punk or goth, you recognize the punk or goth, you know? And I see it. This kind of reminds me of Parker Posey in Party Girl. So the floral ones, probably not so much, but anytime that there's like a figure and a person, and honestly, like just in general, it reminds me of like zines. It reminds me of DIY. Like very loud rebellion. And I think that's why, who's this person? Yeah, I think that's why this makes me feel like it's very punk rock. Like punk can look like anything. Maybe it's a little bit Riot Girl too. Because they weren't trying to, like Riot Girl, like Kathleen Hanna was dressing in like Little Mermaid t-shirts and like little dresses and things like that. Like you didn't have to look masculine, like stereotypically, or wear a bunch of studs and leather to be a punk, you know? So this is the Gentle Thrills. Okay, the last three that I have, I will show you all together because I feel like they have something in common. So let's move this. I think that these are all gothy and or punk decks, but what they have in common is that they all remind me of a certain place and time in history. And I mean, that's not a coincidence. They're all referencing images from another era. And what that does is it hits differently now than it did then. So to me, like Goblins and Gardens, like, sure, this is based on Dungeons and Dragons and like gardening magazines, you know. Dungeons and Dragons isn't mutually exclusive with goth and punk, but I don't think it was linked to that explicitly. Like, let's say if you mentioned Dungeons and Dragons, it wouldn't automatically make you think of a punk or a goth person. Does that make sense? And then this one, the Tenebrae, has a bunch of, this is all photos and it's all like grayscale. And I don't think many, or let's not say many, I don't think like half of these images would be considered goth like back when they were taken, but now they feel goth, if that makes sense. And then this one, the same goes for this. So, or punk rock, like it's a cult following, so that's about counterculture as well. So I'll just show you a few cards from each. Like, we definitely think this is very goth aesthetic now. But in the 80s, I'm not sure that it was, you know. Or at least not like specifically. And now we look at it and we're like, oh yeah, like spoopy vibes and like, and just the idea of this deck is like very, very punk rock, like putting two of this person's interests together. And again, in a very DIY way. So there's something about collage decks like in general. So like I could have included more collage decks, but I purposefully didn't because I wanted them to have a certain energy as well. But something like, there's just something inherently punk about like handmade collage decks, like someone cut these out, you know? And the reason is that, like I've said earlier in the video, it's just like a very DIY lifestyle. And, you know, there were tons of punk zines and things like that. And that's kind of what this reminds me of. So that's Goblins and Gardens. This is indie, but you can get it. It's on their website if you just Google Goblins and Gardens Tarot. Next is the Tenebrae. I have the Whispers edition, which means it has descriptions, which I really value because the guy who made this didn't include a guidebook per se, and also has very different definitions for the cards than I do. So it was really nice to be able to like see these through his eyes. So like this might be considered goth in the 80s, but something like this wouldn't necessarily be. But I'm reading them very gothic all together. And maybe because they're all, like I said, all together. But there's something about the vintage factor, which makes it more ideal as like fitting into the goth aesthetic. There's like an eeriness. You know, like that's just a photo of a ship, but with kind of these like the grain and the age factor to the actual physical photo, unless he added this after the fact, which is like, they're all different. So good on him. Like he is doing a great job. But it feels ghostly, you know. It feels dark, it feels edgy, it feels moody, it feels subversive. And I think that's the underlying, like the common denominator. Like even this, where it's like this glam lady, like it feels subversive in the way she's looking at you. And kind of the patina that, whether it's manufactured or not, that like this deck feels like it has. I'm like really passionate about this deck. I love it. I don't know it well yet because I just got it recently, but I'm really enjoying it. And I don't know if you know, if you watch my channel, you do know, I don't really like to read for myself, but I've been reading for myself with that deck, and it's like actually nice to me, and like it's very weird. Okay, so then this has just like a lot of themes that we would associate with punk and goth, and I love it. I love it. But I don't think necessarily, especially like the cyber, I love the cyber part of this deck. This is the Occult Following. I got this on Etsy. This is the holographic edition, so the regular edition doesn't have like this holographic finish on it. And I'm not sure that this deck as a whole would appeal to a punk in the 70s or 80s, or a goth person in like the 80s, maybe the 90s. But like as we create distance from the decades that like they're taking these images from, the more subversive they become, the more appealing they are to like people who like counterculture, the more edgy they are. It's really interesting. I don't know, that's how I'm seeing it. That's my observation. Let me know what you think. There are definitely themes in here that have always been punk, you know? Like I'm not saying that there aren't, but I think it's getting like increasingly more fringe. I don't know. Which is funny because it's like society is so much more free as far as like what styles you're into, or like it's gotten more extreme about like what is edgy, because so many things that were considered edgy back in the day are not anymore, and they're very mainstream. But like things like this, they might be more common, but they're not any less like counterculture. Does that make sense? Well, I hope it does, because those are all of my goth and or punk decks. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it was kind of all over the place. Let's blame the people upstairs. Yeah, let's just do that, okay? I hope you're all having a great day. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being curious. Thanks for being my friend. thanks for being here. And my mom's coming. I gotta go.